Hi, I'm Julie Falatko, and I am the author of Snapsy the Alligator Did Not Ask to Be in This Book, which is illustrated by Tim Miller. And I'm here today to talk to you about pitching in writing and why you would write a pitch for your stories. When I first started working with my very good friend Elizabeth Stevens Omler, whose debut picture book Walk Your Dog is amazing and you're going to love it, and it comes out next year. When we first started exchanging manuscripts, she sent me a manuscript, and on the bottom of it, at the end, it said pitch, and there was a pitch for her manuscript. And I thought, that's weird. Why would you write a pitch if you don't have to? Why would you do that on purpose? I didn't understand. But after a while, I started to see the genius of it. The reason I didn't want to write pitches was because it's hard. And it's like the question when somebody says, what are your strengths? And it's hard to answer that. It's almost like talking about yourself because it's talking about your manuscript. Why would you write a pitch for your manuscript? There are a few really good reasons. The first reason is that that pitch can serve as a mission statement for the story. So if you write a pitch and then the story seems to lose its way, you can go back and look at the pitch you wrote and think, how does this serve this story that I've written? That works for picture books and it works for longer novels too. So if you have a story and it's about a girl on her first day of school and you write a pitch for it after you write your first draft, and the pitch is, Janie's first day of school goes exactly as she planned until the playground starts to move. And then as you're writing the story, you realize that you're spending a lot of time talking about the boy, Bobby, who sits next to Janie. And so you can do two things there. You can think, well, Bobby doesn't really have anything to do with the story, or he doesn't serve my mission statement quite so much, I'm focusing on him too much. Or you can think, I think Bobby is really where the story is going, and you rewrite your pitch. And that's another thing you can do with a pitch is, if you are having trouble writing a pitch for your story, it probably indicates that there is a problem with the story. I had a story once that I was working on, and when I tried to write the pitch, it sounded really boring. And it wasn't so much that the story was boring, it was just that the story didn't have much of a point, I guess. So interesting things happened, but why? Who cares? Also, when I wrote the pitch for that story, I realized the main character was kind of angry, and that came through in the pitch, but I hadn't been able to see that when I was looking at the story as a whole. And he was angry for no reason. So I was able to rewrite the story to make the story better and then the pitch better at the end. Another reason you might want to write a pitch is so that if somebody asks you what your story is about, either on the street or at a conference, you already have a sentence written that you've memorized, or at least is in your head somewhere, for what your story is about. Another reason to have a pitch written is if there's some sort of pitch event on social media where you can pitch your story to editors or agents. It's nice to have that already written so you don't have to stress out on the morning of the pitch event trying to figure out what your pitch for your story should be. To that end, I usually write a bunch of different pitches for each story. I might write a Twitter length pitch. And I have an agent now. I don't do pitch events on Twitter anymore, but I think being able to distill the essence of your story to 140 characters or less is really helpful. And then I'll write a longer pitch that might be more like the flap copy on a book. So I talked about pitches looking like flap copy for a book, and that's another really useful reason to write a pitch, is it can be very helpful for your agent or for your editor if you have some of those things already written. Agents and editors, they're really busy, and you know your story better than anybody else. Why not have you be the person to write promotional copy? They can tweak it and edit it, and they will and should, but if you've already got a sentence or a paragraph written, I think it's really helpful. If my agent is going to submit a new story of mine to editors, why not send her the pitch so she's already got that part of the submission email written? She doesn't need to take the time to write it because I've already done it. And then when your editor is writing promotional copy that would go on websites or on the book itself, if you have something already written, then that gives your editor a starting point to go from. So how do you write a pitch? It's pretty simple, really. And I think that if you read a lot of promotional copy on books, the flap copy on the back of books, you'll see a formula. And I think you have some room for being a little bit creative. Mainly you're trying to write it so that it sounds like the kind of book that you would want to read. What I usually think of as the formula for writing a pitch is main character plus a problem. That's a really helpful one for writing a short pitch, like a Twitter pitch, but a longer pitch it just adds to that. You're trying to write some kind of teaser to get people to feel like they have to read your story. You're not writing a synopsis. That's a longer thing, and that's where you talk about everything that happens in the plot of your book. This is a pitch. This is a short come on that tries to get readers, potential readers, to pick up your book and start reading. If you've got your main character plus a problem, then that lets people know who your book's about and what kind of trouble they're going to get into. Let's think of an example. If we have a boy gets a dog, that's not much of a pitch. Maybe your main character is the boy, but getting a dog is not a problem. Or is it? Right? That might be what would make it an interesting story. So a boy gets a dog who's actually an octopus. That might be a more interesting story. I just made that up. It might not be a very interesting story, but you can see how that might add a problem. Let's think of an example. Let's look at what I used for the Pit Mad pitch for Snapsy way back in 2013. Pit Mad is a Twitter pitch event. And so this is the pitch that I used for Snapsy. We've got Snapsy, the main character, and then the problem, which is the narrator, who's narrating his day wrong. See that? Main character plus a problem. When it came time to do promotional copy, my editor at Penguin was able to use that same formula to write a longer pitch, which looks like this. But you see, it's the same thing. Snapsy the alligator having an ordinary day, but here's this narrator narrating his day wrong. That's the main character, and that's the problem. I know pitching can be scary. I know it can seem like something you don't have to do, but I would really, really urge you to write a pitch for your story. You can write it when you get the idea for the story. You can write it after the first draft. You can write it after you've done a few rounds of revisions. But I would recommend doing one fairly early in the process so you can make sure that you can pitch the story and so that you have a guiding sentence for what your story is really about. Writing pitches is like any other kind of writing. You just need to practice. And with more practice, you'll get really good at it. And then you'll get so much more comfortable writing pitches. And soon you'll be writing pitches at the bottom of all your manuscripts too. And you'll feel like you've got a handle on this and you can talk about your stories to people and send your ready-made pitches out into the world.